Well, 2 years after Sri Lanka's economic meltdown triggered mass protests, over 17 million eligible voters are preparing to pick a new president for a 5-year term. Sri Lankans usually vote along religious and ethnic lines, but with the country still facing massive national debt and rising inflation, many will be keeping the state of the economy in mind when they vote on Saturday. As DW's Akanksha Suksena reports now from the capital, Colombo.
Sugat Dhammika and his wife Shama Nimali used to do pretty well, but now they're struggling. They've spent most of their savings just to make ends meet and can no longer repay their debts. Their printing business has been hit hard by rising costs of raw materials, fuel and electricity in the last 4 years.
I had up to 5 employees working for me. With the crisis, orders for printing gradually went down. Then I had to reduce my staff and sell some of my machines as well.
I pawned all my jewellery because of the cost of living. I am unable to buy it back, so it's owned by the bank now. My husband does all kinds of work nowadays to look after the family.
That work includes driving an auto rickshaw, something he'd never have considered before the crisis. 1 in 4 Sri Lankans live in poverty, the World Bank says. Their struggle to afford basic necessities like food, medicines and fuel triggered nationwide protests in 2022.
The economy has been bad for a long time. Just over 2 years ago, Sri Lankans protested here in central Colombo. They forced the president to flee and brought down the government. But the economy is still in crisis and still the #1 issue that voters want to see politicians tackle.
The future generation should stay here in Sri Lanka instead of going abroad for opportunities. That is what I want the government to ensure.
The need of the country is to economic recovery and also stability. And also people expect non-corrupt government.
For the last 2 years, the government has stuck to the IMF plan to stop Sri Lanka going bankrupt. But its current foreign minister told us there is still work to do.
Things are okay, but we are not out of the wood. You can't expect that to happen in 2 years' time. But compared to what we are looking after the poor, vulnerable, providing them lunch, providing them fertilizer, providing them food education, free health, as well as in some cases, free rice and rations.
His boss, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, is running in this election, hoping to win the full term. A veteran of Sri Lankan politics, his economic policy is closely tied to the IMF plan. Since he's been in charge, inflation has dropped from 70% to 5%. Interest rates have fallen, the rupee strengthened, and foreign reserves increased. But Wickremesinghe also faces claims of protecting corrupt officials from the previous administration. Challenging him is Sajith Premadasa, a career politician from a centrist party. He's pushing for changes to the $2.9 billion IMF bailout. He aims to adjust economic reforms and revamp taxes to reduce the cost of living. But all eyes are on Anurakumara Dissanayake, whose popularity has surged since the protests. His anti-corruption message and promises of a political overhaul seem to resonate with voters wanting systemic change. His party also wants to renegotiate the IMF terms. None of the candidates hold much attraction for Sugat Dhammika and Shama Nimali.
We do not feel like voting for any parties this time.
Even so, the election on Saturday will have crucial implications for families like theirs across the country.
And DW correspondent Shalu Yadav is in Sri Lanka's capital, Colombo. Now, the economy is clearly a very big focus for this election. The country is still reeling largely from the crisis in 2022. How has the situation been changing for people on the ground since then?
Well, Well, Jared, as you rightly said, that this is the worst economic crisis that the country has seen in its history ever. And President Ranil Wickremesinghe has sort of negotiated a deal with the IMF that has sort of stabilized the economy. But on the ground, on paper, these things might look good. Like inflation has come down, the currency reserves, seem to be improving. But cost of living remains really high. So does unemployment as well as poverty in the country. So really, at the end of the day, it comes down to what people can put on their plate 3 times a day and whether they can afford those 3 meals a day in the first place, Jared. So, many of the people that we spoke to told us that they have lost the confidence in politics and all sorts of the politicians who are making all these big promises. And so, this is a very precarious situation. And we hear that the results of this election will really sort of decide the future course that this country takes. But we'll have to wait and watch to see what happens in the coming 2 days.
And as you say, there is still a high cost of living, unemployment and poverty in the country. Look, there are a record 38 candidates in this election, so you can imagine there are a lot of promises being thrown around. How are all these candidates promising to bring the economy back on track?
Yes, 38 candidates, and it sounds like a lot, but it really is about the 4, top candidates whose pictures appear in local newspapers almost every single day, highlighting their promises. So here you see on the left you have Ranil Wickremesinghe, who's the current president. He's running as an independent candidate, and he's really asking people to reward him for all the hard work that he's done over the last 2 years to somewhat stabilize the economy. Here he says that his biggest promise is that Sri Lanka will be out of bankruptcy soon. A tall claim, I have to say. And then here you have Sajid Premadasa. He's the son of former President Ranasinghe Premadasa. And he is pledging a fuel subsidy to farmers, fishermen, and tuk-tuk drivers in the country. He says that he will also renegotiate some of the bits of the IMF deal that are not so much pro-people that have been negotiated by the presidency of Ranil Wickremesinghe. And here you have Anura Kumara Dissanayake, AKD, as he is popularly known in the country. He is emerging to be the most popular leader right now in this presidential, the battle, really. He says that he's going to, take some anti-corruption measures along with making some changes to the IMF deal, which is going to be more sort of people-centric and poor people-centric. His Marxist ideology seems to be resonating amongst the young people, and especially the protesters who were, who literally overthrew the last government of the Rajapaksas. So he's riding high on that wave of popularity, and the lack of, trust in politicians really is working in his favor because he doesn't have any governance experience, Jared. But that's exactly, the party says that that's exactly what is going to work in their favor because they are going to start with a clean slate. And last but not the least, it's Namal Rajapaksa. He's the scion of the Rajapaksa dynasty who was shunned out of the country. But this time, experts say that it's going to be the last nail in the coffin for the Rajapaksas, Jared.
Very comprehensive roundup. Thanks a lot for that, Shalu. DW correspondent Shalu Yadav in Colombo.